Welcome to the Pause with Pythian podcast. I'm your host, Pythian Priestess. Breathe in, tune in, and let's take a sacred pause together. The time is now. Let us begin. Hello, Mystics, and welcome back to Pause with Pythian. Today, I am taking a sacred pause with Emily Flood. She's known as the Fitness Witch. You may have seen her on Instagram or TikTok. Emily weaves movement, fitness, shadow work, and spirituality all into a beautifully grounded and empowering path of healing, and I'm so excited to talk about it with her. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. That was a beautiful introduction, Ashley.
Oh, you're welcome. I've been following you for quite some time, and you have grown a lot. For people who are new to your work, Emily, tell us, what is fitness witchcraft?
Yeah, so fitness witchcraft originally started out as a modality to help witches specifically release binge eating and fitness-related self-sabotage. And then as we continued through growing the business, having more clients, it's really become a modality that helps witches both with their mental and physical health after trauma. And we're really pioneering this bottom-up approach to health. So most people think of health as just a nutrition plan or a fitness plan or taking some supplements. But the nervous system and the subconscious mind actually do impact real things like metabolism, hormone production. And of course, if the body has been in survival mode for a really long time after trauma, that can look like things like binge eating, of course, but it can also look like dissociation or numbing out with food, weed, or alcohol, or like that sense of not wanting to move your body or not wanting to go to the gym. And so when we here with Fitness Witchcraft, we really focus on the subconscious mind and the nervous system before even bringing in things like a workout plan or a nutrition plan.
Right, I understand that. So you're going into the different levels of the physical body. That makes sense.
Yes, including the body as the subconscious.
Yeah, the mind and that body connection is so important. Wow. So there must be a story behind this. What inspired you to create Fitness Witchcraft? Was it your own healing process?
Yeah, and so like I mentioned, it was originally for binge eating because this was something that I was struggling with after my history with bodybuilding. So I had no problem losing the weight. But then it was after the competition that I really struggled with binging and not being able to like control myself around food. And I went to a dietitian who specialized with binge eating. That helped a little bit, but it didn't fully help. I worked with another dietitian. I worked with other coaches. I worked with therapists, and nothing really helped me to get deep enough to release the binge eating to where I could feel like I could trust myself around food again. And it was happening simultaneously, but I didn't think anything of it at first. But, I just started I got an oracle deck, right? And I started pulling a card a day. And it was through intuition that I started to, in a roundabout way, learn how to trust my body again. And the more that I delved into magic, the more that then it helped me with binge eating in my body. And so that's really where Fitness Witchcraft came from. And then it was actually my own journey of getting out of a narcissistic abusive relationship and discovering shamanic journeying and doing these really in-depth journeys where my guides and deities like the Morrigan and Hecate were showing me how to feel safe again in my life, that I would walk out of these shamanic journeys with a light bulb moment over my head of did that actually happen? Holy shit, this was so impactful. I wonder if this could help other people. And so naturally it started to grow into this much bigger program and have a much bigger impact than I ever could have imagined was possible.
Yeah, it sounds like just from your experience and trauma, you've created this healing ripple effect that now can help so many people.
Right.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you dive deep into the subconscious to be able to find what was the trigger or whatever it's called for the binge eating?
Yeah. And so every craving that we have is actually a message from the body. And so in my program, I have a tool called the Cravings Consciousness tool, where you are communicating with the body via that craving to figure out what the craving itself is actually about. So especially when we have really intense cravings, there's usually a subconscious need being met as well. And so some examples of this, let's say the stereotypical mom who's got multiple children, she works the hard 9 to 5 job, and she's, prepping dinner for her kids, and her kids are like screaming and running around the kitchen, and she goes to the pantry and gets that handful of chocolate chips. And when she eats those chocolate chips, it feels like that one moment of zen that she gets throughout her day as she is, being present in that moment of like feeling the chocolate like in her mouth, right? And really, for her in that situation, the chocolate would represent a subconscious craving to feel rest. And because she's the type A mom, when she feels like she always needs to be working and working and working, her body is like, well, okay, the only way we can get that feeling of rest that we need is by sending her an uncontrollable chocolate craving. So at the very least, in those few seconds while she's eating chocolate, she feels rested.
I see. That makes sense. And it shows it reflects in other popular psychological books right now, like the Gabor Mate, The Myth of Normal, and etc. That's really cool.
Yeah. And so everyone's cravings are different. And I think the weirdest one I've seen so far is that someone's potato chip craving was like their craving to spend time with their horses. And so when they would go spend time with their horses, they didn't crave potato chips. And then on days where they didn't see their horses, they had a potato chip craving.
Wow, that's amazing. So it's really substituting with food. Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm. So I want to talk a little bit about like the spiritual side of movement and fitness. I think that there's a pretty big disconnect in a lot of Western religions where we're trying so hard to transcend the body or, elevate the soul that we forget about the physical vehicle.
Right. And this comes up a lot in Kabbalah, right? With the taking the middle path. And that I think we tend to think that, oh, if we're spiritual, then we see a lot of people where I'm in Austin, Texas. So there's a lot of drug spirituality here where they're just going to take the mushrooms and the ayahuasca and the frog medicine. And they're just living like almost like above their heads in kind of a dissociated state. And that can often be numbing out where you're ignoring physical reality by taking these drugs every day. And then, of course, then people are on the other side of the spectrum and they're completely ignoring anything spiritual. And then that's where we can see a lot of these conditions popping up in the body. And so bringing what your question was about, like bringing spirituality into fitness, is that the body is also spiritual. And since the body is always sending us messages, it's going to send us messages if we're not taking care of it properly. And so with fitness witchcraft, I mean, yes, I used to call on the Morrigan to help me to feel safe at the gym, right? I would call on like her warrior goddess archetype of like helping me to go into the gym like a warrior goddess, right? But even like walking can turn into a meditation. And I'm sure your listeners have already heard you talk about this, but meditation can look very different. It's not just about this like releasing thoughts from your mind. You can contemplate things. Your walk can be, and set the intention on your walk to get messages from the universe or from nature and have like the walk be a divination experience. And I find that for my clients, this actually makes the fitness part enjoyable because it's no longer seen as a punishment and it becomes integrated into their spiritual practice, which then means that they're no longer like fighting against their body.
Yes, I agree. There's a disconnect on both sides of the scale here where we're no longer connecting to divinity either because we are disassociating or abusing special plant medicine, or we are so not connected to spirituality at all. I'm trying to think of a better way to say that, but we're living in the mundane, the material so much that we can't like find that elevation. But the body, like you said, is spiritual. And that's a huge part of the divine feminine that people don't talk about, is that it is the embodiment, the eminence of earth, and movement is important.
Right. And yes, we are spiritual beings, but we're here on earth in bodies, and we can't ignore material reality.
No, as much as people would like to, or they would like to numb themselves out and forget about it, it doesn't go away. I love that you mentioned the walking meditation. We do have a guided meditation for walking, and it is focused on actually taking step by step, feeling the connection to the earth and moving up through to the head.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually came up with a lot of walking meditations through, I mean, actually reading Valion. I've got it
Amazing.
over there. And because there's so many of the instructions are meditate on this law or like contemplate this. And yes, you can sit and contemplate, but also you can walk and contemplate and gain all of those new insights for yourself through walking.
Yes, I was visiting Germany in 2019, and there's something called the Philosopher's Trail. And that's where people would go and walk down and look at nature and contemplate.
Well, now I want to go to Germany and walk that path too.
It's pretty fun. It was very rainy when I went, so I do
Hmm.
not, but people didn't care. They Germans will walk in any kind of weather.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. You talked about connecting to the Morgan. What are some of the other archetypes that you have seen crop up for your clients?
Yeah, and so my clients work with a variety of deities. Like I've had a client who came in terrified of men. And this is why I like working with deities because I can never possibly know the inside of a client's brain and all of their history. And when we work with guides and deities, like a guide, if they pop in, will know exactly what that client needs in that situation that I wouldn't possibly be able to know. And so, for example, this client, she had a huge fear of men. And in one of our shamanic journeys, Poseidon came in specifically to help her to release her fear of men so that she could reach her goal of going back to the gym and working out in that male-centric space and feel safe. And so that's, of course, something that I never would have told her to do, knowing that she had a big fear of men, but it was exactly what she needed in order to reach the goals that she had. And so my clients, it's whatever guide wants to come in during those journeys can help. And then I also have the fitness goddess archetype quiz, which sounds like you might have been referencing. And so that quiz specifically pairs people with a goddess based off of how their default trauma responses are showing up on their health and fitness journey. And so those 4 archetypes are the Athena archetype, the Persephone archetype, the Morrigan archetype, and the Aphrodite archetype. And they correspond with the fight, flight, freezing, and fawning trauma responses. And so since there were only 4 of them, I had to pick 4 goddesses that best aligned with each of those trauma responses, where Aphrodite, for example, in order to release the people-pleasing fawning trauma response, what we really need is to love ourselves more so that we can start to set those boundaries in our lives and put ourselves first instead of gut reaction putting everyone else before ourselves. And so that's why I put Aphrodite with that archetype. Athena corresponds with the fight response. And we like fighting, it's great, but oftentimes this looks like fighting against your body, and also like then we flip and then we fight against diet culture and we're like, okay, well, I shouldn't want to lose weight anyways. And then you're just fighting endlessly, going nowhere. And so I paired Athena with this archetype because, yes, she is a war goddess, but she's also a strategic one. And so it's about getting strategic with where you are fighting. Do you want me to go into the others?
If you don't mind sharing, yes.
Yeah. And so Persephone corresponds with the flight response. And so what we see showing up in the flight response a lot for people is that they will start the fitness journey or they'll start the diet or the nutrition plan. And then the second that things go wrong, they'll run away from it. They'll completely like go all or nothing with it because they're scared of not being perfect. And so then with Persephone, I paired Persephone with this because Persephone has no choice but to be in the underworld for half the year. She can't just run away, but she also can't really get comfortable being in one place because then she does have to go back up to the surface. And so Persephone is really teaching staying power through new uncomfortable situations. Like I have to imagine her first week in the underworld was a big culture shock, right?
Absolutely.
And yeah. And so she represents like the staying power that's going to come when you are a perfectionist and you're learning how to release that flight response when things aren't going perfectly. And then the Morrigan corresponds with the freeze trauma response. And this is actually most common with the quiz results because freezing, as it shows up in health and fitness, looks like numbing out with food, weed, alcohol, endless TikTok scrolling, Netflix binges, book binges. None of these things are bad, right? It's not bad to have a glass of wine, right? But when it becomes your only coping mechanism, then it is that freeze response, and it's kind of dissociating, numbing out, etc. And so what's most needed with the freeze response is to start taking action. And so that's why I paired it with the Morrigan, because, well, she helped me to release my freeze response. But the Morrigan is one of her archetypes is around self-sovereignty. And so learning to rule yourself, learning to take action for yourself is what really helped me to start to get out of that freeze response a little bit and kind of taking responsibility for my life and like, okay, no one's going to come save me. I get to be the leader of my own life now.
That's amazing. That is so cool. Did you came up with that all on your own?
Yes. And
Wow.
really, I was noticing that all of the 4 trauma responses were showing up for people regularly in different ways. And people over-identify with the quiz, I have to say, right? We probably all have all of these trauma responses, right? And the predominant one for people with health and fitness tends to be the Morrigan archetype, right? Or Aphrodite. Then I get people in my TikTok comments saying, this just happened yesterday, saying, I was so upset when I got the Athena archetype and I work with Medusa.
Okay. Well, there's different sides to every story. We're multifaceted archetypes here.
And I tell people it's an archetype. It doesn't mean that you have to work with Athena. You can have Medusa help you with the same themes to help you to release the fight response.
Yes. I think that there is a difficult conversation that needs to be had with practitioners on certain platforms that deities are not people and they do not hold grudges, that they are a metaphor for an energy system. They are not personal. Right. Very, very hard to understand for some people. But that's why I asked about archetypes specifically, because like you could have written connect to your god, connect to your goddess, but it's deeper than that because it's a part of you.
Yes. Yeah. And I love the way that you explain that, because that is part of how I help people who are skeptical. For example, I have a couple people with PhDs in psychology who come into my program who are very logical. I've worked with therapists, again, who are very logical. And so I always tell people, like, does it really matter if they're real or not, if it's helping you on a psychological level? And then they're usually like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, great. Then we don't actually need to know if it's actually the Morrigan talking to you, if it's helping you.
It's a story. It's a symbolic story using a certain color of the rainbow to connect to that part of your brain. It's as easy as that.
Right. I love that.
That's amazing, though. What an incredible way to fuse together spirituality, psychology, and fitness. I hope you hope you're making a lot of money, girl. I hope you're getting your bag.
Yeah. We're growing at a rapid rate. It's incredible.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about your business. You're physically based in Austin. Do you do remote work with clients?
99% of what I do is entirely online. It's funny that we are recording today because I actually just had a client come in for a VIP weekend where I arranged, like, for her specifically, okay, we're going to go out to my local waterfall and we're going to do a ritual, like, out there. And she came into my house. We did a shamanic journey here on my couch, and we, like, had an entire weekend together. But that is very rare. That's 1% of what I do on occasion when someone wants to have that in-depth experience with me. But otherwise, everything is online. My biggest program is called the Warrior Goddess Program, which is a year. And yeah, it's all group coaching.
Oops. While recording, we lost like half of the interview. I don't know what happened. I have done everything to try to get the footage back, but it just doesn't exist. I wish it had been saved for everybody. So unfortunately, this is where we have to leave our episode with Emily today. But I urge you, check her out on social media. She was kind enough to send me a nice voice memo of all of her socials for you.
You can find me on TikTok or Instagram at myogi_fit. And my website is emilyflood.com, where you can find all of my mini courses and my programs. I highly recommend that everyone start with the Fitness Witchcraft Exploration mini course, as that goes over the science and psychology of how fitness witchcraft even works. And then I also have a Facebook community called Fitness Tips for Witches, where people share all of their witchy and fitness wins.
And obviously, we're going to have her come back again because that was such an amazing conversation. And there is so much more to explore in the world of movement, witchcraft, and mindfulness. I'll drop it all down in the description below for you guys to check out. And until next time, mystics, breathe deep, stay present, and let your light shine. Bye.